So a couple quick things. One, please mute your audio. So you can keep your video on, just turn your audio off so we can eliminate any background noises or anything like that. Also, you'll be able to send questions using the chat feature as we go along. So if you come across questions or want to ask something, please feel free just to use the chat feature, send the question to me, and I'll do my best to answer it. That being said, I'm going to kind of throw that disclaimer in there that I don't always have all the answers. But I will do my best. I have a couple follow-ups that I need to do from the desktop session from this morning. So if I don't know what the answer is, please feel free to email me and I will research and get the answer for you. So just a little bit of information about myself. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Bonnie Llc. I am an accounting services supervisor in our Chambersburg office. I've been with the firm, come September, be 16 years, and I've been a pro advisor since 2006. So I've had a couple years with QuickBooks and working with it a little differently than what you all do. Of course, this webinar is for QuickBooks Online. We did a desktop this morning. Just to explain a little bit about what a user group is, which is what this is. I've been holding these in our Chambersburg office for about 5 or 6 years now. We've had really good luck with them. It's a great way for people to come together, share ideas, ask questions. A lot of times I don't even respond. Somebody else across the other side of the conference room table will answer the question. So it's a really good open forum when we do this on a face-to-face. So Zoom is definitely putting a different spin on it for me. So we're going to use that chat feature so you can ask your questions. If somebody else, I usually try to read the questions off, or at least that's what I did this morning. So if somebody else on the call knows how to answer a question, please unmute yourself and chime in. I welcome that as well. So that's a little bit of background on what the user groups are. I will mention that we are going to send a survey at the end of the session via email. If you would please fill those out, that's going to help us determine whether or not we're going to take this avenue in the future. We had a really good response on both desktop and online, so I'm kind of leaning that way, but also give me some feedback, what you found helpful, what I skipped over, what I missed, what you'd like to learn more on. So please share your thoughts with me, both pros and cons. I don't mind constructive criticism because it is helpful. Also, if you could please give us a Google review if you feel so inclined to do so, and also like us on Facebook. Those are all good things for us. So, all that being said, let me get here to what we are going to cover. Now, of course, QuickBooks Desktop has gotten to be more widely used over the past couple years. I will probably say one of the pros to QuickBooks, it can be a pro and a con, is that it is always the latest and greatest. You've always got the most up-to-date version there is. The problem with that is you always have the most up-to-date version there is. Because changes take place a lot of times in the middle of the night when we're snoozing. These guys are updating our system. So we may log in the next morning and find something is completely different. They are actually, Intuit is devoting about 80% of their resources to updating and making QuickBooks Online better. So a lot is going into making this more user-friendly, giving you more tools and things to work with. So just keep that in mind. I know that there was one time I went in to do a bank rec, or the client went in to do a bank rec. He emailed me and said, "What happened to the bank rec? It's completely different." I had no clue. I hadn't been in there. I went in and looked, and yep, overnight it had changed completely. So just be aware of that. They do try to send out information. So I'm going to touch on first navigating. One of the first things I will say though is if you are running with multiple screens, you have the option to duplicate tabs, to duplicate the screen. Like it's nice to have something on one screen. So if you have two computer screens, you can go up to the top, up at this tab up here, and right click and say duplicate. And it's going to take that screen there and it's going to move it over to your other screen. So it's going to just put a carbon copy of it. But that way, if you're looking at reports on one screen and you need to record a transaction in another, it is very useful. Keeping in mind that QuickBooks, when you open one screen and then click on another screen, one overwrites the other. So it's desktop tends to layer screens one on top of the other. QuickBooks Online does not. So if you open one report without having a second screen open, it's going to close that report out when you go to open up another one. So having duplicate screens, if you have more than one monitor, is great. Just make sure that when you do that, if you record a transaction on one monitor in QuickBooks, you need to go to the other and refresh your monitor so that it updates it with the new information, with what you just recorded, okay? Very important to do that. So next, I want to talk about the navigating. So they've changed some things recently too. It used to be you had a plus sign up here where you added transactions. Now they've moved that over here. That came out a couple months back. So here, this new with the plus sign is where you're going to add transactions at. The gear icon up here, which is what they call it, is more of your administrative links and things to use and go to, managing users, account settings. We're going to dive into this a little bit more. I know this is an area a lot of people do not explore very often. You're more over here at the new to add transactions and do what you need to do. So I want to explore some of these things under the gear icon. This screen here in the center is what that's your dashboard. Home screen, whatever you want to call it. These are actually pretty nice. I like to be able to come in and get that visual of where things are, your invoices, your expensive. It gives you a nice visual on things. Your bank accounts over here. If you click the little pencil, you can move these around. If your checking account is at the bottom of this, you can grab it and move it up so that you have these in the order that you want them to appear. So you can also go to the register here, and you can also click down here to connect up more accounts. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. I definitely want to explore the banking, connecting up in accounts, the downloads, and so forth. So, so with these bank accounts, these here where it says 25 to review, 1 to review, these accounts are connected up. Keep in mind this is a sample file. So that means that there has been an upload or download, however you want to say it, from the bank to your QuickBooks file. And that means there's that many transactions there that need to be reviewed and dealt with, either posted or assigned to an account, whatever the case may be, but that's telling you what the current status is. The other thing I like about this screen is it does tell you at a glance what the bank balance is and what the QuickBooks balance is. Okay, so once these 25 transactions are reviewed and dealt with, chances are these two balances are going to be very close together, if not the same. So just to give you a heads up on what this is, what you have going on, you can add your logo into QuickBooks. I'm going to show you where you can do that as well. It's kind of nice to see up there. It will also populate it on any invoice forms. So just to keep that in mind. All right, so now we're going to go over to, let me show you this new button first. Apologize. So this kind of breaks it down: customers, vendors, employees, and other. Other, you're going to get your journal entries. You can run statements, do bank transfers and deposits. This allows you to go in and record checks, enter the bills, generate a purchase order, enter credit card transactions. Your customers, where you're going to do invoices, receive payments, do sales receipts, credit memos, and so forth. I don't know what the show less. Okay, show less is definitely going to take it down to just your bare basic transactions. But then you can show more and get all of this. I guess it depends on what you're doing in the program. Like with any QuickBooks program, there's multiple ways to get to things. So you have this new button here, but you also have the buttons here on the side as well, the links on the side. So you can click here to go to the registers. You can go to banking from here. Expenses, include your vendors and expenses. Sales, this is going to include your customers, your invoices. This is going to give you a complete overview of any invoices you have outstanding, any money you have coming in. They have really been doing some updates to these over here lately. I just noticed not long ago the projects populated over here. And this is for such as jobs. If you have a customer with multiple jobs and you may be doing job costing, I noticed that's come over here. Another one was the My Accountant, where you can click on this and communicate back and forth with your accountant, which is a nice feature. So they've been modifying this over here. So just keep an eye on it. Things are being added every now and again. All right, so let's go up to the gear icon, and I'm trying to keep an eye out for anybody sending questions. So if we go up to the gear icon, the first one I want to look at is this account and settings. So these things are kind of like the trunk to this QuickBooks tree, is how I will put it. So your account and settings, here is where you're going to add your logo. You can click the pencil over here to the side. I don't know if you can see it with my screen stuff up, but there's a pencil over here for you to edit. You can click on that. This is where you're going to specify your name and so forth. Contact information. But the one I like to focus in on is the advanced. Let me show you usage real quick too as well. If you're wondering, so QuickBooks Plus has some list limits in it. Essentials does as well, but you have some limits in QuickBooks Online. And you have the same thing in the desktop edition. So with QuickBooks Plus, you have only up to 250 chart of accounts. Now you think about that, that's a pretty big chart of accounts. This file has 44. So this kind of gives you, this usage gives you an idea of what you've got left, where you're at with your subscription and what you have left. You'll notice that over here, when you come up, and I don't know if you can see this, but it talks about some of the other programs and getting unlimited accounts, unlimited classes and locations. So you can always update the number of billable users that you have with your subscription. It's important to note that I think it's Plus has 3 users, Essentials I believe is up to 5. QuickBooks Online recently came out with, within the past year, I believe, came out with QuickBooks Online Advanced, which is similar to the Desktop Enterprise Edition. So that's their big, their full-blown, top-of-the-line QuickBooks Online program is the Advanced. And where you see down here that you can get up to 25 billable users and unlimited accounts and so forth, I believe that's where the Advanced is. Yeah, that's what it says. So you can get up to 25 billable users, unlimited accounts, unlimited classes and locations. So this Advanced program is just, it's much larger for bigger companies, depending on what tools you need as to whether or not you would need to go up to the advanced. So on this subscription, they've got 0 users out of 5. They have 5 users. You can invite up to 2 accountant users at that does not count against your billable users. So if you have 5 users on your level of QuickBooks Online, you can invite 2 accountant users and still have 5 still available for you to assign out to individuals. So keep that in mind. So if we're going to go down to the advanced, which is what where I really wanted to explore, because this is where a lot of your features are, your accounting method, whether you're cash or accrual, that's going to determine how your reports are run as well. Fiscal year, first month of your year, closing the books. So that's something I like to hit on. Let me see, we got a question. Okay, apparently they've got some questions related to entering expenses and income, and we will hit on that. I promise. Okay, so it talks about the account numbers for your chart of accounts. Do you want account numbers? Not everyone uses account numbers, but you have that option. Whether or not you want to turn on and use class tracking, that is where you do this as well. Automation, pre-filling forms, currency, date format, and so forth. So this advanced tab under the accountant settings is where a lot of you can turn on and off your features. So just keep that in mind. A lot of people use class tracking. If you wanted to explain a little bit about class tracking, that is where you want to track different segments of your business. As an example, if you have you're a real estate company and do rentals, you can track the different locations so that you can determine, so you're different. So let's say you have 10 homes, residential homes that you rent, you can put each one of those homes as their address as a class and track the profit and loss of each one of those units, which is kind of nice. If you have different business locations, you can track it that way. Construction, where you have commercial construction and residential construction, you can track each one of those profit centers. So that's how you can use class tracking. Somebody else had mentioned this morning earlier that for a nonprofit, that's how they like to track their fundraising events. So another way to use class tracking. So just be aware that that's there. Okay. So talk about closing the books real quick. That was one of the things we had here. You can password protect that. I do encourage people to close their books. Once you've gotten past your year end and you don't want to change or accidentally, and trust me, I am into March before I get the date, the year end right. So closing the books will, it helps to avoid posting to the wrong year. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so we're going to X out of that. There was a question about whether or not, if you're using class tracking, if classes will print on the checks. They will not. I have tried it in both of the programs. You cannot get the classes to print on the checks, unfortunately. I think it would be a nice feature, but it won't happen. Okay. All right, so also under the gear icon, we have your manage users. This is where you're going to set up your users and assign privileges. This is where you're also going to invite your accountant user. I need to move that. So if you click add user, you can send the invite. They set up their own login. I mean, set up their own password. Their login is going to be their email address. So QuickBooks Online is not one that you are going to be able to share logins. So don't try to get around that with the number of users by sharing logins. Accountant tools. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I thought accounting firms, duh. This is where you invite your accountant. Okay. So you put the email address in there, click invite, and you'll be able to invite your accountant. Let me see. The custom form styles, that is for setting up your invoices. So you can do invoices and statements. That's where you'll be able to do that, insert your logo and get them tailored to the way you want them to appear. And then of course you have your chart of accounts. Now keep in mind that you have a limit. This chart of accounts, let's see, we'll take a look at this. So it tells you using 44 out of 250. The ones with the arrows means that they are connected to the bank. You'll notice the credit card is the same way. So this account is talking, QuickBooks is talking to the MasterCard company, and it's also talking to your banks, and transactions are being shared. You can view the register in this chart of accounts. If you come over here, you can edit your account here. Say you want to rename something. You can run a report on this account as well. So kind of like a quick report. And you can also make it inactive. So if you're getting close to the number of accounts in your chart of accounts, you can make accounts that you are not using inactive, and it will reduce the usage. It'll reduce your account totals. So just to keep that in mind. To add an account, you just come up here and hit new. You need to make sure that you select the account type, whether it's bank, fixed assets, income, expense, other income. Whoops, sorry about that. Then once you select the type of account, we'll do expense, then it's going to have you give some detail. What type of account is it? Because it'll align it in the chart of accounts that way. Then you can come over here and put the account name. If you're using account numbers, and select that in the preferences under the account and settings that I just was telling you about, you'll have the account number up here at the top for you to enter. And you can also determine, well, tell it if you want it to be a sub account. A sub account, and one that I think of the most would be insurance expense, but then you have it broken down and have sub accounts for liability insurance, workers' comp insurance. That would be your sub accounts. Okay. Okay. One thing I wanted to mention, and I looked at this morning, this QuickBooks Labs, that's something that changes periodically. So what that is, and it doesn't hurt to go in and check it every now and then, because these are things that QuickBooks is testing. So they want people to come in, and it just like it says, come play in our high-tech playground. They want you to go out and try these new tools that they're working on. So right now they have a cash flow dashboard widget and importing styles. It says you can spice up your brand with your own invoice design, and you can insert that from a Word file, which I thought was pretty nice. So that'll allow you even more customizing with your invoices. But if you want to come in here and test out some of their things that they're playing with and decided not to implement quite yet, they will ask for your feedback on them, what you thought. They also tell you up here at the top, and if you notice this, if you have new ideas or have ideas for new features, let them know. Again, this QuickBooks Online is a work in process. They want to know, they want to hear from you guys as to what you want. So if we don't tell them, you know, we're not going to get it. So if you think of something that may be helpful in the program, please come in here to the labs and let them know what you'd like to see, or tools or features that you would like, because that's how it's going to get in there. Okay. All right. So I want to talk about list a bit, which is up here under the gear icon. So you have all these lists, your products and services. These are the things that you sell, and what these products or services are the items that you're going to select when you are doing an invoice, how it's going to appear on the invoice, but it also links it up with the correct income account. So when you go in, you'll notice you have, on this one, you have design, and as sub-accounts of that item, you have concrete, pump, and rock fountain. We can go in. You can always add a new product or service. Tell it the type of product it is or service it is. So if it's a non-inventory item. And QuickBooks is pretty good about guiding you on what to select. You can add a picture of this item if you'd like. Enter the name. You can enter a SKU, the category under here. If you sell it to your customers, which would be correct, the price that you want to populate on the invoice. And here's where you're going to select the income account that you're going to link it up to. So no matter how many times you sell that item or select that in an invoice, it's always going to go to the same account. So, and that's what you want. And then whether or not it's a taxable item. If you purchase this item, it's going to ask you what expense account, what the cost is, and what your preferred vendor is. Again, this is going to link things up for you in QuickBooks. It's going to streamline your processes. Okay. Also under the list are your recurring transactions. So this is essentially a memorized transaction. If you have something that is coming out of your account on a regular basis, so here they have the monthly building lease, a telephone bill. If you have transactions that happen on a monthly basis, weekly basis, quarterly basis, this is where you're going to set them up just to keep them, just to streamline your entry process. So with this monthly building lease, this means that they have set up a memorized or recurring transaction to post every month. The next date is going to be on the 23rd of May, 2020. This is the vendor. This is the amount. So this is going to post a bill on this date for you to pay for $900. So what you get when you do this is consistency in where it's posting. So it reduces the chance of posting something to the wrong account. But it also streamlines that process. It's not something you have to keep in your mind. The other thing, if you have loan payments coming out on a regular basis, it's nice to have those. I would do this by simply clicking New. I would do those by a check because it's not something, if you're not writing a check for it, but you want it to post to the checking account, select check. Okay, there we go. So a recurring check, you're going to see that comes up. You're going to tell the name. Let's say it would be a loan payment, truck payment, whatever the case would be. You want it scheduled. Do you want it scheduled? Do you want a reminder? Or do you want it unscheduled? Unscheduled would be it's there and you can go in and post it when you want to. Reminder, the system will give you a reminder that you have it coming up that you need to post it. Scheduled means the system is going to post it for you. Excuse me. You can tell it the number of days in advance, the payee, exactly how you want it to show up, how often you want it to post, the date you want it to start. One thing I like to do with these is our monthly depreciation entries. A lot of our clients that we do bookkeeping services for, I like to make sure that we get their depreciation in each month. I will set this transaction up for them, have it to record for 12 months because that depreciation will change in the following year. So that way, after 12 months, it's not going to record that transaction anymore. It's going to be, I know I have to go in and set up a new one. And then you tell it what account. You can put multiple lines in here if there's a breakdown, interest, principal, whatever the case may be, and hit save template. And when it does that, it's going to post it over in that list. Depending on the settings that I selected is when you will, when it will post it or remind you, or it'll just be sitting there for you to post. Okay, let's see. When you make custom forms, why won't it use them? Okay. Good question. We can look at that. But I think, if I'm not mistaken,
what I meant by that, I made personal forms, custom forms, and it'll use my estimate, but if I go to make an invoice off of that estimate, it won't use the custom one. It'll use its own invoice.
Was wondering if there was something in here that you have to tell it.
I've had a couple girls in the office try and figure it out, and nobody can figure it out.
Oh my. Preferred invoice terms, customize. So you've gone in here and customized the form.
I have a custom estimate and a custom invoice. And it's no problem using the custom invoices or estimates, but when I try to make an invoice off of that estimate, it won't use the custom form. It'll use its own generic invoice.
Well, let's look at something here. And it's not giving you any option on which invoice template you want to use either.
Bonnie, does she mean that she has the estimate already set up and then she wants to turn it into an invoice?
Correct.
Oh.
So it's an estimate and then they turn it into an invoice. I've not seen that done, so I'm not sure, but.
Why won't it use my custom form?
Estimate.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Do we have any in here with an estimate? I don't know if there's any in the sample file that have estimates set up.
It's no problem to go in and make a new invoice and I can use that custom form, but it just won't use it to come off of an estimate.
It's, I'm not sure. So there's no estimates in here. You have my email address, right?
Yes.
Email me that and I can find out. I can get a hold of support. Have you contacted support on that?
No, I've just used girls in your office to ask them and they couldn't figure it out.
We can contact support. Our pro advisor support is pretty good on that. We can reach out to them and see if there's maybe just a fluke in the system or what it is. So yes, shoot me an email on that. Okay. And I'll find out.
Okay.
Good question. I didn't realize that was an issue. Okay, let's see, no more questions right now. All right, so we've looked at the recurring transactions. I'm going to touch on attachments when we get into the banking, because that's where that's going to play a part. I did want to look at reconciling. If it'll go there for me, there we go. So to get started with your reconciling, let's do it. So this looks a little different than what I'm used to. I want you to keep in mind that you can, and I know a lot of people don't do this or not aware that the system will do it, but you can reconcile your credit cards and treat them the same as you do a regular bank account, which is nice. It makes sure that you are up to date on your liability balance, your credit card balance on the balance sheet. It keeps that up to date. The one thing that I really do like about QuickBooks Online, and I do think it's a perk, I struggled a little bit in the beginning, I'll be honest, but was the banking section, which all this is going to be tied together. And how it posts transaction. It takes a little bit to get used to, but it's a really nice feature. It keeps your books up to date as much as possible. And it does streamline your processes if you use it the right way. So if you have your bank accounts and your credit cards connected up, then this can get pretty easy as far as a reconciliation is concerned. So we are on the reconciliation screen right now. One thing I wanted to show you is this history by account. This is nice. It'll list all of those. It doesn't look like this has been reconciled yet. Let's see if the savings, but it'll list all your transactions down through here. It'll also let you know if you have changed a transaction that was reconciled. So you want to keep that in mind. That can get a little messy. It's so easy to go in and change a transaction in a register, or actually to clear a transaction as you're scrolling through the register, which I try not to do because it is so easy, that you can easily change your beginning balance once you have reconciled a period. That can cause problems when you go in to do the next reconciliation. So if we go to reconcile, and we'll select the account we want. Now, if you haven't done any of the reconciliations yet, they do have a tutorial you can watch. Select the account, enter your ending balance and your ending date, and you can click Start Reconciling. It's going to want. Oh, shoot. Okay. Now, if you are bringing, this is something important to remember, if you're importing transactions or bringing transactions in from the online banking and they're coming in from your checking account or your credit card account, once you have accepted, you can click Don't Show This Message Again, by the way. So once you have accepted that transaction in, when you open up this reconciliation screen, you're going to see all the ones that you have accepted or matched in your online banking. These are going to be in blue, like they would be if they were cleared transactions. So keep that in mind. One of the things, especially if you're downloading, to make sure that you have your statement ending date marked up here. If you by some chance unclick it, you can go back in and reset it as well. So you've got your checks on one side, deposits on the other, and just clear down the line. But again, if you're importing in and out from the banking center, then most of your transactions that you've accepted or matched up is all going to be cleared. So it really does streamline this process. One thing I do want to mention is if you are pulling in your transactions from the online banking, for those transactions that you're actually writing a check for, I see this more often than not. Like if you're printing a check, you're running that through QuickBooks. But if you've got handwritten checks, they're not necessarily entered in QuickBooks. When you pull those in, you want to make sure that you are assigning a vendor to that. That is going to affect 1099 processing at the end of the year. So please keep that in mind. For anything that you are writing a check for, especially if it was a handwritten check, you want to make sure that you are, if you're accepting it in through the online banking center and not actually entering it directly into QuickBooks, but entering it through the banking center, then you need to make sure you are specifying the vendor so you get a proper count on your 1099s at the end of the year, if that applies. Okay. And then once you clear all your transactions, you've got a zero difference up here, finish now, and you're good to go for the next month. There's a couple different ways you can show deposits only and clear them like that. And it depends on how your bank statement comes in. You can also just click payments and clear them like that. Or you can show all. It just depends on how you want it organized. I believe if you click the type up here, it'll sort it by check, receive payments, bill payments, deposits. So it sorts it for you. I believe you can do that. You can't do it by account. You can do it by type. All right, so we are going to get out of that. The same thing with your credit cards are done the exact same way. And again, I would encourage you to do that. It is such a nice way to stay up on your credit card transactions. So right now I'm going to go over a couple things. One, I want to talk about the search feature up here. This is similar to the Find in the desktop edition. And if you click search, this is going to show you the last however many transactions, the last transactions entered. Okay. But if you click this advanced search, I use this a ton. So if I want to look at all transactions, but I want to see, and this is, I usually sort by amount, and I can sort by amount and do a search, and it's going to bring me up these transactions. You can do the same thing. Click on it, drill down into it. You're going to see that was a bill payment check. So it's going to bring you back to this transaction. Then you can click on it, bill payment check. You can drill down into it again. There's the actual check and the bill that it paid. So it'll take you back to the originating transaction. So use that search feature. That's really nice. It took me a little while to get used to the most recent transactions, but that as well is nice. If you've got to go back to something, the quickest way to get to it is to go back. All right, I know I made a mistake with that. I can go back and correct it. Just a quick link right back to the last few transactions that you posted. All right. Also using the help in here. This help screen is good if you need to record a bad debt. I've done a couple of things in here. Recording bad debt. I've had to search on different things. How to run a particular report. How to get a transaction in correctly. I mean, no matter what it is, this help screen is good. If you click the contact us, they don't like to share phone numbers, but I can tell you the videos here, explore that as well. That'll take you step by step. If you weren't aware that QuickBooks does have a YouTube, they are out, well, Intuit is out on YouTube, and they have a ton of videos out there on how to do just about every stinking transaction you can imagine. So using the videos, using YouTube, using the help screen, that's the best way to get the information on how to do things. So please explore the videos. That is just a great way to learn how to do simple functions within the program. All right. So let's talk about the banking a bit. I know I've mentioned it a couple times. We have a lot going on with this. So if we click on this banking link, these are the transactions or the accounts that are set up to and are set up to connect with the actual banking websites. So they've got checking, savings, and MasterCard. It will tell you when the last time they were updated. It'll tell you how many transactions are there to review. Click on the various ones. It takes you from window to window. It takes you from account to account. You can always go to the register here, another way to get to the register. And then you can come in here and deal with the transactions the way you need to. Now, couple things to note. One, there are rules that you can set up to streamline this process. So this is where this gets, really reduces the amount of time posting transactions. My only caution is dealing with deposits, with income coming in. You notice these all say uncategorized income. So don't be confused by these coming in that you can just post them directly from this transaction. You would want these to say match, okay? So if you get a payment, and what I mean by this is if you get a payment in from a customer on an invoice, you still need to go to sales and receive the payment on that invoice, post it to the invoice, then go to your bank deposit and post it to the checking account. That is the first step in receiving money in QuickBooks. Now, then you're going to go to banking, because otherwise it's not going to get posted to the proper customer account. Then when these come in here, you will see a match over here, just like down here. You're going to see match, because QuickBooks is going to recognize that you made a deposit at the bank for X number of dollars. But if you post it from here like this, and this was actually a payment on an invoice or multiple payments on multiple invoices, remember QuickBooks is seeing from the bank, what's coming in from the bank, one deposit amount. It doesn't know what customer it's for, doesn't know what invoice it's paying for, or multiple invoices it's paying. So don't confuse that step, because it will make a mess out of your accounts receivable. You've got to make sure you follow the right process. So once you do that, QuickBooks will look here and it'll match it up to the deposit in your actual register. Okay. So you can also do here. So it says you got 25 for review. If I click on categorize, it's not giving me any. It's not giving me any excluded. What I typically do is post the deposits the way I like them to, and then I exclude, because these would be on invoices. I would exclude them. So I click the ones I want to exclude, and then they come out of this list, and I don't have to worry about them doing anything with my deposits. I know I've got my deposits taken care of. Now they come up in the excluded list. I go back over to my review. You notice that came down. Come in here, 10 Philip Masonry. So what I can do, if this is somebody that I would do business with on a regular basis, I might want to go in and set up a rule for this one. We're going to see him come through on a regular basis. So it says, okay, categorize it. So we want to make sure that we do the right account. So cost of goods sold. And this is where you streamline your entry process. Okay, I'm just going to select a. So let's say that's the account I wanted to post to. You can assign to a customer and project in here, and you can tell it if it's billable. What you can also do is create a rule for this. Once we've got it set, so let's say a good example of this would be someplace like Staples. You go to Staples, you buy office supplies. Staples is office supplies. You use your check card, and this is where this process is very helpful. You use that check card, or use your credit card. You don't have to come back and enter it. Just wait till it comes through the online banking and then post it from there. So we can create that rule. And what this says, what do you want to call this rule? Staples transaction. Apply this to transactions that are money going out, not coming in. Include the following. All, and you set bank text or an amount or a description if it contains a certain thing. Once you see these coming in from the bank, you'll understand what the bank text means because it is different. Then you can assign it to what account you want it to come through and who the payee is. And you can also tell it to automatically confirm transactions this rule applies to. Like you can tell it to auto add. So this is where this comes in handy. I know it's not right. That's where this process, these rules and this banking comes in handy. If you're someone, I know I do, live off my check card. We have a lot of clients that do the same thing. They don't write checks nearly as much. They're using check cards. They've got credit cards for the guys for gas and so forth. That is where this comes in handy. So use it as a tool that it is. Just be careful with it at first until you get the hang of it. Now, one of the other things I wanted to show you on this, and I mentioned it earlier under the gear icon, was receipts. So you have the option, and this is one that they've expanded on a little bit recently, is where you can take a picture. You can take a picture of a receipt. Say you're at Lowe's, take a picture of the receipt, and you can load it in here. Now, if you notice, it says Snap on Mobile. Take a picture of your receipt with the QuickBooks Mobile app and review it here. Now, I had a client that said, okay, well, I've got all these receipts, but I don't know how to post them. You have to post the transaction first, okay? So you have to get the transaction that's coming in from your bank into the register first. Then you can come over here and upload your receipt. Same thing as with the banking, for review and reviewed. So for review, it'll list it here, and then you can tell it what transaction you want to link it up with. So just keep that in mind. You do have to attach, you have to upload and post the transaction that the receipt is for first. This is really nice. It eliminates a whole lot of the little paper receipts and so forth. You can just ixnay them, trash them, and it's in your QuickBooks file. Really super nice feature. Okay. So we talked about downloads, rules, batch transactions. They don't even have this in this new file, and I think it's something that they've gotten rid of. But if you click multiple transactions, once you tell it where to go, you can click accept, and it'll accept all those at one time. You don't have to do them one at a time. So take advantage of that as well. And then I did make a note about the income and the deposits coming in and posting them to your customer accounts first. Okay, so one of the things somebody wanted to discuss was entering budgets in QuickBooks. And I want to let you know, budgets are not available in QuickBooks on, I believe it's the plus version. You have to go up the next one. I believe it's essentials. You have to be in that version to have the budget feature. So if I come over, I believe it is under, it's under the gear icon. And if you come over here to budgeting, I actually like this one better than I do the one in QuickBooks Desktop, to be honest, because of how it's viewed. Just the overall view is a little nicer and to work with. I also like the fact that it gives me my other, it gives you your totals as you're working through this budget. So you can name your budget, state your year and so forth as to what year it's for, how often you want it, monthly, quarterly, you see it changes it, and then yearly. Pre-fill the data. So you can actually use actual data from a prior year to pre-fill the current year budget and then go in and modify that. That does save you some time. And whether or not you want to subdivide. Okay, then I still have yearly selected. You're just going to go right down the line and enter your, oh, it doesn't like that. Okay. Then you click next and go over and you can enter your income amounts. So if you noticed what I just did there, once you enter that in, if you click that little blue arrow, it'll copy it across the row. So if when you're entering budgets, if it's consistent for the whole year, certain expense, same amount for each month or each quarter, however you're doing your budget, you can copy it across. You can clear the row by clicking the X there and start over. So this budget is actually a lot nicer to work with than what you have in the desktop edition. And it even allows you to hide blank rows and show a compact display. Okay, so we're going to X out of that. Any questions on the budgets? Okay, so let me get to the next one. Wanted to talk a little bit about accounts payable. That when I first started working with the online edition, it can be a little confusing because you've got a bunch of different transactions. So let's get out of here. I'm going to leave without saving. No. Yes. So if you go up here under vendors, you've got expense, check, a bill, and it can be a little confusing when you come in here. I know, in the desktop edition, and I don't like to compare. I don't want to compare, but you're used to writing checks or enter bills. So it is a little bit different. And it took me a while, I'm not sure about everybody else, but it took me a while to get the hang of this. So a check is just what it says. It's kind of like just going in and entering a check. It's perfect if you've got a handwritten check, or if you just want to enter a check. You're not entering bills, but you're just going through that one-step process of entering bills and then going in and printing the checks off, period. So you're not having to enter bills and deal with the accounts payable. You are just going in, processing a check. You can do handwritten checks this way, or you can do printing checks this way. So we enter the vendor, you would click print later. If you're going to print it later, make sure you select your payee. You can still add a vendor on the fly in here just by clicking add new. So we'll do Bob's Burger Joint, which would probably be really good about right now. Payment date, we're going to select our category. You've got multiple lines. You can always add lines by hitting that plus. Office expense, you can put a description in here, whether or not it's billable, if you need to assign it to a customer, and then the amount. You need to get rid of a row, you just come over here and click that trash can. So they make that very easy. Notice here where you can add an attachment. So if you scanned a receipt, you can go in and click that receipt and attach it in here. Another thing that's nice, if you're dealing with purchase orders or a copy of an invoice and you want to get that in here. One thing I like to see this on is when you are purchasing a major piece of equipment or a fixed asset of some sort, it's nice to add that into that transaction, because you know those accountant people will come to you at the end of the year and want a copy of that invoice. And when it's right here in your QuickBooks file, it is just so easily accessible. That is a really nice feature. Let's see, what else do we have? So once you've recorded that transaction, you can just hit save and close and it'll go into print queue if you selected it to print. If it's a handwritten check, just put your handwritten check number in here. Any questions on that? That's the easy stuff. If you notice down here, I just clicked the make recurring. You can also do a recurring transaction. That's how you would set that up. You can print the check right from the screen. I know they have order checks in here. I will caution you that QuickBooks checks tend to be a little pricey. So just err on the side of caution there. And that's it with that one. Okay, we're going to get out of the budget screen. We've got a question here. I was hoping for that. Okay, maybe a silly question, but nothing's ever silly. What would be the benefit of writing in the check when you know it's going to pull in from the bank? Exactly. Not a silly question. Just remember that not everyone is comfortable with doing these banking downloads. I mean, we have some people that just are not comfortable with it. I'll be completely honest, I was not 100% on board with this linking up the bank transactions and all initially. And it took me a while to buy into that, but they fine-tuned it quite a bit since the first time I saw that. But if it is coming in from the bank, no, you do not need, if you're linked up, you do not need to enter it in QuickBooks. However, keep in mind, if you're not entering QuickBooks, you should on a regular basis be going in, doing that link up between the bank and QuickBooks, so that, and posting those transactions so your bank balance is up to date. That would be my only caution, because if you're only going in once a week and doing the upload and link up between the two and posting transactions, a lot of things can change in a checking account balance through the week. So just keep that in mind. If you rely on looking at your register balance, you're going to want to keep that in mind. But no, not a silly question at all. If you're not using the upload, then you definitely need to make sure that you're entering it in QuickBooks.
Can I just add one thing to that, Bonnie?
Absolutely, Sharon. Sharon is one of our employees. Sharon works.
Sorry.
No. This is what's good for everybody else that's listening in on this. Sharon works right beside me. She is also one of our QuickBooks people. So if I'm ever out, I always send everybody to her. So chime in, Sharon.
If you are writing checks, I mean, you're saying that if you don't, you wouldn't need to record the check, but what if the check didn't ever clear? And then you didn't have it in your file and you don't know that it didn't clear, or...
That's a good point.
I understand if you're using your debit card and you wait for the charges to come in. But if it's an actual check, you might actually want to have that recorded.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I didn't even think about that. So thanks for chiming in. Very, very valid point. So what she's saying is if that check never clears, you know, you don't know you've got that outstanding when you go to do your reconciliation. So valid point if you want to make sure you're keeping track of all those checks. The other thing I mentioned earlier is, remember, when it comes in from the bank and it's not entered into QuickBooks, and I was thinking about this while you were talking, sometimes, remember I mentioned earlier, it said something about, I said about bank text. Because when your checks come in, they're not, at least what I've seen to this point, they're not going to come in with that vendor name in the payee field. So it'll affect your 1099 processing. If you're paying contractors, you're going to want to make sure you go in and put that payee field in. So just to mention that as well, because the bank text is on one line, whereas it does not populate the payee field for who the check was written to. So that's a big difference on that as well. Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome.
I have a follow-up question then.
Okay.
So say you do write the check in separately and it pulls in from the bank, is it automatically going to match it, or are you going to have duplicate transactions?
It does not automatically, well, if you've got it in QuickBooks, what it looks for when it comes in from the bank is date, something that's going to match in the text, and the amount. So I think if it matches date and text, or one or two of those items, then it will, in your online banking thing, say match. So it's recognizing that match, and then you can post it.
Okay. And if it doesn't recognize the match, do you just delete it, or like manually match it?
No, I don't think you can manually match it. It's gonna add it is what it's gonna do. But what you can do is exclude it.
Okay.
Okay. Remember in that list it had, what was it? It was, oh crud. Hang on. It had, all right, now it's going to take a while. So it has for review, categorize, and excluded.
Yeah.
So where it would normally do this, because this is exactly how it'll show up. So it saw an expense for a certain amount, and it said, okay, it might not have matched this other stuff, but it saw that the amount was the same. It allows you, or says, you know, do you want to match it? I like the fact that it does it and doesn't do it automatically, actually. Mm-hmm. So does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Yep. Mm-hmm. All right. And then we have another question. Is the online version and the desktop version of the check printing format the same? Good question, Kelly. I think the checks are the same. It's the check at the top, 2 stubs, if that's what kind of check you've been using. That's the one I prefer to use, but not everybody does. But you need to make sure that you are doing, so yes, the check format is the same type of checks. If you go through Safeguard or wherever you go, it's the same type of check, but make sure you go through the alignment process. You have to do that. That makes a big difference, because that's QuickBooks' way of making sure that everything is just so. Even though you would have printed out a desktop, and I know that's what you've been doing, coming into the online edition, it needs to go through that alignment, getting the printer and QuickBooks Online all synced up together. So you're definitely going to want to do that. I think once you do that the first time, you're okay. You don't have to do it each time. Okay. All right, good questions. Okay, let's see what else we got. So we talked about the check. Bills is pretty self-explanatory. That's where you're going to get a vendor bill in, and enter a bill. for payment later. So that's what's going to give you, doing it this way, it's a two-step process. You're going to go in and enter a bill and then go back later and pay bills. So you're using a true accounts payable process. Entering is the same way as you did the check, except you're not adding a check number in. So just keep that in mind. The expense is the way to enter. Under expense, dagnabbit, here we go. Under the expense, it's a nice way to enter a transaction on the credit card. This is where I see this the most. This is where you're going to enter your credit card transactions, or even if you've paid for something by cash. So keep that in mind as well. But this is the primary screen for entering your credit card transactions. Now, credits are a little bit different. You will notice that under new, credit card credit is up here, down there rather. But your credit card transactions are going to be entered through the expense transaction, and you can tell it what credit card account to enter it against. And again, I love this reconciling. I cannot emphasize that enough of reconciling your credit cards. It's a super nice tool. So unless you're paying your credit cards off every single month, that doing it through the reconciliation, treating it like a bank account is the best way to do it. When you set the account up, by the way, you have credit card. So when you're adding the account, let's say you set up a MasterCard account, when you go to the chart of accounts, you actually select credit card, that it is a credit card account. And it'll treat it like a bank account. So it's pretty cool. Okay. Any other questions with regards to expenses? I noticed last year, the 1099s, used to be that QuickBooks Essentials and up were the ones, Plus did not have 1099 processing. I noticed that they've added that to the QuickBooks Online Plus. I actually like the 1099 process in the online edition a little bit better. I think the information on the reports and all that you get in online is nice. So clicking that prepare 1099s, but you just want to make sure that you've got your vendor set up right. Go to your vendor center. You can come up here and click edit. If you go to your vendor, just make sure that you're clicking that track payments for 1099 here. Also make sure you get that 1099 ID, whether it's an EIN or social security number, enter it the right way. And then also you can enter a default expense account. So another way, again, to streamline your entry process, if it's an account, I used Staples as an example previously, but you can enter a default account so that when you go in and enter a check or enter a transaction, it automatically defaults to that. You can always change it, but it'll default to that account, one that you use on a regular basis. For your vendors that are tracking 1099s, you can click the attachment here, and I did that again. Click the attachment and you can include their W-9 in the file. So nice feature there. Entering your terms. Okay. So any other questions with regards to vendors and expenses and bills? Did I answer everybody's question with that? Oh, got one. What is the best way to log paying yourself as a business owner? And also, what is the best way to log income being paid as a subcontractor by another company? Okay. Best way to log paying yourself as a business owner. It depends. If you're if you're like a single member LLC or a sole proprietor, that's going to be a draw. So you would post that to, could do it as an expense. Well, you're going to write a check to yourself, just post it to owner's draw instead of an expense account, which owner's draw would be an equity account. In an S corp, you would more than likely be drawing a paycheck. So that would go through payroll. You should be running that through payroll. And hopefully I answered. What's the best way to log income? Okay, single owner, LLC, single owner. So it should be a draw. So I would set up a owner's draw and an owner's contribution account. They will both be equity accounts. So when you go to your chart accounts, the account type is going to be equity, and do owner's draw, and your money that you're paying yourself would be posted to that account. As far as the best way to log income being paid as a subcontractor by another company, then I would set that up as a regular income account. Depending on the type of income, do you want detail? You could actually name it subcontractor income or subcontract income, or whatever type of income it is, so that I would probably set that up in a separate account all its own, so you could see that listed separately and be able to track the amount of money that you're getting, the amount of income that you're getting as a subcontractor. There might be some value in that for you. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So I wanted to touch on, how are we doing on time? We're probably good on time. Wanted to touch on payroll a little bit, just kind of talk about the payroll settings, year-end additional reporting, so we can kind of chat about that. So in the payroll, of course, we've got employees, contractors, workers' comp. Employees and contractors, too, I want to focus on. You can pay your contractors. This is a nice perk in the online edition. You set your contractors up similar to an employee. They can be paid via direct deposit, or you can write a check. So also gives you the 1099s here as well. Prepare the 1099s from this. So this is a nice feature, and I would suggest using it, because you can set them up as for direct deposit. But I want to go into the payroll. Somebody's got a question. How do you pay them via direct deposit? I haven't been able to figure that out. I knew somebody was going to ask that. I have one client that does this. And I think when you go in, email this contractor to complete their profile. They'll gift their own account to safely share their personal details. Well, let's see. That was a good question, by the way. Here you go. Add contractor direct deposit info in QuickBooks. And it even gives you a video how to set the contractor up. I kind of like the self setup, quite honestly. Let me see. I do have another client that actually does pay theirs with direct deposit. And this is what I'm talking about, these little help screens that they have. They are really useful. Watch, it won't give me the information. Okay, add contractor deposit. Now this is in self-employed. Send me that and we can look at that a little bit further. I know there's a way to set that up direct deposit, and it may be that the contractor does it with the self setup. Okay. And we have another one as well. Hang on here. we got a lot of. Okay, thanks. All right. What else do we got? Okay, so let's go up to the payroll settings. Sorry, I get sidetracked sometimes. Accounts and settings, QuickBooks Labs, no. So I'm going to go over here to payroll. Doesn't want to let me out. Love it when I get that message. Okay, add an employee. I cannot find my payroll setups. Sharon, any idea there?
Does this have payroll?
Well, it's got 2 employees set up. Payroll setup should be right up here. Payroll settings is what it should be, unless they've changed it.
The one thing about payroll is if it's a more automated payroll where they do everything for you, you have very little access.
Yeah,
to things.
that's for sure.
Make your tax payments and all that kind of stuff, then you have very little access to things.
They have getting started, so they don't have it turned on in this program, in this sample company. That's what it is. So they had 2 employees set up here. That's why I figured it was already set up. Yeah, so I'll just mention a couple things with this, Sharon. That's a valid point, that the full service payroll, so there's a couple different levels of payroll to have in the program. And the full service means you essentially just enter time and print checks or do direct deposit, typically direct deposit. It is a pretty fast system. I mean, it's easy to set up, especially the full service, because they kind of take care of all of it behind the scenes for you. Your tax payments are going to be made via e-file or e-payment. They're going to tell you when they're due. And you're just going to click a button or 2 and it's going to send the tax payments for you. Main thing you got to do is make sure you got money in the account.
One point there with the taxes, the local taxes, they don't handle those.
Nope.
And you have to have it specially added, the LST tax.
Yeah, that was my next thing. Caution on local is what I had. Yeah, they do not all the locals are set up properly. So for anybody within Pennsylvania that is processing, because we have people from a couple different states here. So if you're setting up a new employee, just be aware that local tax, you need to verify that during the setup process. There's a couple buttons you have to click on that and make sure that the percentage is correct. Do not assume. There's a couple things you can assume with QuickBooks. The one thing you can assume with this is that the local may not be right, so don't assume it is. Always double check it. And again, like Sharon mentioned, which was a good point, the LST has to be added as a additional deduction item, I believe.
Yeah, it's a deduction.
Yeah. So it's not like some of the others that we have where LST is spelled out. You do have to add it as another deduction item. I think it's In desktop, I think it's an other local tax, but you don't have that option here. It's just an other deduction item.
Yeah.
So thank you. Also, year-end reporting is a little different in QuickBooks Online. So you want to make sure that at the end of the year, if you have shareholders' health or mileage, there's additional reporting items, especially for S Corps. You want to make sure that you're going in and processing those at the end of the year after the last payroll. Now, I will tell you that QuickBooks does have it set up, or has gotten easier, and does have a way to set it up so that shareholders' health can be added in throughout the year. You just have to make sure that you set it up when you set that employee up. So just keep that in mind. So let me see here. What haven't we covered? Is there anything in particular anybody wants to cover before I get into reports? There's not a ton there to go over with them. I'm looking at sales transactions, customers. I love this bar up here. If working with other softwares, this is a quick glance and is very helpful. I noticed they added these shortcuts not long ago. They make it kind of hard to get your accounts receivable out of whack. Oh, something I did want to mention. And it just occurred to me, journal entries. I didn't get into journal entries. So, of course, you have your journal entry screen. You know, those pesky accountants will sometimes send you those entries that you need to make at the end of the year. And sometimes those entries include either accounts payable, accounts receivable, adjusting those accounts. And previously, if any of you have worked in the QuickBooks Desktop Edition, and I want to mention this specifically because it's really nice in the online edition. So previously, if you worked in QuickBooks Desktop, you could not enter an accounts payable, accounts receivable, or sales tax payable account in the same journal entry. You could only use one of those accounts. That is not the case with QuickBooks Online. I can enter, so if your accountant, like if you go through an audit and they have multiple lines in a journal entry and one may be accounts receivable and one accounts payable, that can all be entered just as the auditors give it to you. That is really nice. That has been a pain for years in the QuickBooks Desktop Edition. So it really does help with that journal entry process. Receiving payments. Can't think of what else we need to do in this screen or what else we want to cover. Mileage, taxes. They don't have sales tax set up in here. So let's talk about reports for a little bit. I do want to mention something about sales tax. I've run into this a couple times where typically sales tax is filed on cash basis. So it's once you get the money in, not on the accrual basis. Okay, somebody's got a question. Steps for applying adjusting journal entry AP or AR or AP item to clear them out of reports. Okay, I'll hit that next. So just to mention real quick, so the one thing I do like about the sales tax is the sales tax liability report. It's very straightforward, provides good information. However, sometimes you're going to have a discrepancy because sales tax, as I was starting to say, is paid on, typically paid on the cash basis of accounting. However, it doesn't like to report, like if you run your sales tax liability report, it'll show it on cash basis. But when you go in to record your tax payment, it's going to show it on the accrual basis, and it causes a bit of a problem. So just be aware of that. I like to be consistent with that. Again, sales tax is usually, I mean, it is accurate on the accrual basis, but if you're paying on cash basis, which is typically the way it is done, and it does not matter how you have your report basis set. You can have your reports set to cash basis, and QuickBooks is still going to calculate it, your liability, on the accrual basis. Just want to give you a heads up on that, because it may affect if you run into a problem between what your liability report is showing you and what your balance sheet is showing you. That is what you're running into. So just to give you a heads up on that. And it's a little tricky to work through it. All right, so we're going to record a journal entry. So one of the questions was, how do we, let me find a vendor. How do we record, clear a journal entry against an invoice? So let me run. So I'm in reports. Run an AR aging detail. What do we got? Red Rock Diner will enter a journal entry for that. So new journal entry. Okay. All right, so we're going to hit save and close. That's 331.20. Okay. Now if I go to customer, select the customer. You see the journal entry there. Okay, depending on what invoice we want to apply it to, got to make sure the journal entry is in there, or the credit is in there. So if I click receive payment, the journal entry will come up down here at the bottom for how much you want to apply. You can apply all or portion. It's automatically going to default to all. You can also change the invoice, because it's going to show all invoices up here. If we wanted to apply it to this one rather than that one, we could do that as well. But you notice when I take it out up there, it takes it out down at the bottom, down here also. There we go. Now, if I go back to, you'll notice that the journal entry comes up paid, and it adjusts the balance. Should have adjusted the balance due on that. So no, it was this one. Sorry. So it closed that, shows a partial payment on this one, which is the one I applied it to. Does that help? Hopefully. Okay, good. That's a good question. All right, so let's talk about reports. So a couple things in here. Any reports that you put, if you customize a report and save it, or memorize a report, that is a report memorized for you, only you. So it's, I don't believe it's shared with others. Anything with the star, you notice the balance sheet, balance sheet. Anytime you put a star beside one of these reports, it should put it up top as your favorites. And I believe this is custom, it is specific to the user. So whoever's logged in, those are the reports that you're going to have them, going to use frequently. Custom reports, if you create a custom report, so let's say we go into profit and loss, and we're going to customize this one. It says that you can now rename selection titles on P&L and balance reports so that they match your business. So again, more things that they're adding new, and they usually do show new features with this little bright new. So you can edit your titles on your reports. So if I go up here and I want to customize this report. Okay, and again, this is saying you can change the order of columns, select and grab the 9-dot icon and drag the column up or down. So those are columns. Now, one of the things I like to do, and I like to open these up, number one, I like to make sure, so you can change columns. Select your period, what's the accounting basis. I want to show everything except accounts with a 0. I like that marked because it cleans your reports up. Also, right here where it says rows and columns, this says active, you want to show non-zero. Whether you have this marked up here or not, you want to show non-zero. This eliminates any accounts with a 0 balance. Cleans that report up nice and sweet. Okay, then here is where you can select what you want to see on this report, depending on the type of report you're running. Here is where I'm going to filter it down, and I want to select just expense accounts. All expense accounts. You can also select them individually. Here's where you're going to select multiple accounts. Maybe you just want to see overhead accounts, utilities, rent, that sort of thing. You can do that as well. So then I'm going to hit run report. And this took the income out, you'll notice, and shows me just expense accounts. Now, one of the best things you can do with these reports, especially in QuickBooks Online, is export this to Excel. It does a nice job with it, and it allows you to go in. Now, I noticed they're adding more and more features in here and more options you have and customize, but the best thing to do is export this out to Excel. There's so much more that you can do. It does a nice job on it too. That's the compact. That kind of spreads it out a little bit if you noticed. That's the compact, and this opens it up a little bit, makes it a little bit easier to read, by the way, for us people with old eyes. But use these filters here to change things up. Here's where you could change the header, or if you wanted to change your report title, we could put I don't want to see the date prepared. I'm going to run the report. And it did not do it. Edit titles. Oh, that is new. Replaces the default titles used in all profit and loss reports for this company. Wow, this is a nice feature. Real nice feature here. So you could customize those titles and it will replace them for good. Nice feature. So we all learned something new today. All right. I know I got a question up here. The question is, do I give Excel lessons also? Good one. I probably could use a few Excel lessons, but I could probably help you work through some stuff. Just nothing too difficult. I'm not an Excel whiz, but cute. But this does, I mean, I know that when I run reports in here and I use it all the time, especially during tax season and all, I am constantly exporting out to Excel. It does such a nice job, gives you so many more options. It just seems, but then again, they are expanding on this, on the reports all the time. They've done a lot with them. If you'd have looked at this a couple years ago, you'd have been floored by the way it looks now. And any of the girls working in the office could tell you that as well. So this has come a long ways. They have a nice deposit detail report. That's one I use all the time. Check detail report. There's your unpaid bills for those of you that are running accounts payable. Excuse me. Here's your check detail report. I don't think these give totals the last time I looked. Yeah, it doesn't give totals. And that's one of the things you can do is export that out to Excel and get you totals that way. And I don't think the deposit detail does either. You'll notice it does any that you've done where you've entered a bill and then gone back through and followed the AP process. It's going to show up as a bill payment check. These are expenses. Then you've got separate checks. Your sales tax payments. This is a nice report. And you can open up your fields, but this is a little weird in the online, but it seems like this is working pretty good this time. Yeah. So they've made great strides on this. Any other reports anyone would like to see? Anything else I can cover for anyone? Oh, hold on. Well, you mean transferred to Excel?
Can a report be exported over to Excel from QuickBooks?
Yeah, you can take that report. Here, I'll show you. So this report is an example, right? See this? Export.
Yes.
If I click that, I can do it to PDF or to Excel.
Okay.
So then when I do it to Excel, it comes up down here in the left corner. If I open it up, I'm going to pull it down for you. Hang on. So this is what I get. I mean, in my opinion, this is a clean report and you can do a lot with it. Same with the balance sheet and all that. I mean, so this gives you something to work with. But yes, and then you can save it from there.
Okay.
Can you see that Excel worksheet?
No, but I saw your
I'm
steps.
sorry. Sorry. But that's how you do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh. I didn't realize you couldn't see that. Okay. All right, I'm trying to get. AR aging summary report. How can I view this report without seeing the negative dollars? Well, good question. So AR aging summary. Okay, so my first question would be, why do you have negatives?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself.
That's how I tell you to.
For example, if we have a customer who pays, 5 cents over, 2 cents over, it shows as a credit
Right.
instead of and it would list that customer in the aging summary.
That's a good question. Let me
Oh.
see.
For example, from the other report that you were going through, but that zero option wasn't listed there.
Yeah, that's possible. I'm wondering. Let me do a credit on one of these. Bill's Windsurf Shop. Okay. All right, so let's do new credit memo. All right. Okay, so there's his negative. So if I was to come up here, number format, divide by 0. That's a good question. Do we have a filter? I don't think it's gonna, that's not gonna do it. Without cents, divide by 1,000, negative numbers. No, I don't think you're gonna be able to get it like that. There may be another report other than the aging report, but I don't think on the aging report it's going to let you take that out unless you export it out to Excel. I think that's going to be the only choice there. Companies getting PPP monies, they're pulled into QuickBooks via the bank. Where do I allocate them towards payroll, assign them to payroll expense? Okay, so I'm not going to dive too far into this, but what I can tell you, because this is such a hot topic, an ever-changing topic, but if you've got the money coming in from PPP into your bank account, the offsetting transaction to that, it should not be recorded as income and should not, it's not expense, of course. So you've got a debit to your checking account. You should be setting up a loan account. Whether it's M&T, Orrstown, whatever the case may be, note payable, whatever the bank is, PPP loan is what I would do. Because actually, until that loan is forgiven, until that money is forgiven, you've done the application for the forgiveness application and completed that process, then it's essentially a loan. So that is what I would do. As far as assigning them to payroll expense, I really can't elaborate on that. I'm not working with these PPP loans and know enough about it to really provide any guidance. That is something that, I know that we have a group within the firm that is dealing with the PPPs that are helping with all of that process and reporting and so forth. And if you're working with somebody within our office, I would suggest contacting them and they could provide you some guidance on that. Unfortunately, I don't have enough knowledge of all of that to do that for you, but I apologize. Okay. All right. Anything else that anybody wants to cover? I've tried to hit on everything. I'm sorry I can't answer this AR aging report. I'll have to look and see if there isn't another way to pull it up. So just a couple of things as we wind down here. We did pretty good on time. And if I don't get any more questions, I think we'll go ahead and call it a session. However, just as a reminder, you're going to get a survey via email. Please fill that in there. Give me your input. Good, bad, or ugly. I mean, it's helpful to me. It also helps me to decide if we do these in the future, if you found value to them. Like us on Facebook. If you get a chance and want to do a Google review and you really found this to be great, I would appreciate you sharing that out via the Google review. If you have questions that I didn't cover, please email me. I will be happy to research and get answers for you, especially with this AR. Send me an email, give me your contact info, and I'll see what I can figure out for you. I appreciate all of you guys. Hopefully you found value in what we've covered and it was helpful in some way, shape, or form. I know it's a lot of information, and QuickBooks Online, of course, is this ever-changing creature. So it's something we're going to have to stay up to date on. So again, thank you guys very much. Have a great day. Stay well, please. And I hope to see all of you soon. Thanks.